When I saw my nephew with his tool, I was overcome with desire. Today, I'm going to tell you how I teased my nephew for a month until he couldn't take it any longer and came after me. My name is Jennifer, and I am 37 years old. I am married to Carlos, who is 45. We don't have children, but we still live in a large house in Florianopolis, a beautiful city that feels like paradise. Carlos works as a truck driver, so he travels a lot and earns well, but this also means he's never home, which is why I'm a woman who is constantly looking for fulfillment. Elsewhere, our marriage has always been good, but sometimes I felt lonely, especially on the nights when he was on the road. That's when my sister asked me for a favor. Her son Christian, who is my nephew, needed to spend a month in Florianopolis to prepare for an army exam. Carla, being the generous and kind man he is, agreed right away. When Christian arrived, I was surprised by how much he had grown. He was no longer the boy I knew. Now at 23 years old, he was quite an attractive. "You're so handsome and strong. You must be very popular with the girls," I joked. He laughed casually and replied that he was too busy with training and studying to think about girls at the moment. I found it amusing how focused and serious he was, but at the same time, I noticed that a feeling inside me was beginning to grow. He seemed different from other guys his age, and this difference caught my attention. That week Carlos had to travel for work again, which meant but I had already started making moves to catch his attention. There was a plan. He didn't know I was executing something new and exciting that made me eager to see what else might happen with Carlos away for work. It was just Christian and me alone in the house on the first day. I decided to prepare a simple lunch. As I stirred the I realized I was more nervous than usual. The presence of my nephew, now a young adult, made me feel a bit uneasy, though I didn't want to admit it. Perhaps out of curiosity, when Christian came into the kitchen to assist me, I noticed he was attempting to be as polite as possible with me, but it was clear that his gaze could not help but linger on me. "I believe this outfit is excessive. I apologize. If it is, I'm just used to being more comfortable and capable at home," I inquired casually as I set the table. Christian, surprised by the question, smiled and said, "No, Auntie, you looks great. Don't worry." The conversation was relaxed during lunch. We talked about the exam he was preparing for, and he told me about his training routine. I then mentioned that he was very strong and in great shape, the kind of body you only see on television. He laughed and thanked me for the compliment, saying he was really dedicating himself. "Before asking you, Auntie, have you been doing any physical exercise? You appear to be in good shape." I responded with a laugh, "Nothing special. I've always been like this and had this body that your uncle likes," but things began to change slowly, and my nephew seemed to notice. He was very respectful of what I was doing, so he didn't say anything to me. The days passed peacefully that week. Carlos was still traveling, and I was growing increasingly curious about how I would seduce Christian. One afternoon after lunch, I decided to wash the dishes and asked Christian to assist me. He came into the kitchen with that calm and shy demeanor, willing to do whatever was necessary. "Will you dry the dishes?" I wish I had asked him, handing him a dish towel. He agreed and began working beside me as we washed. The conversation was casual, nothing special. We talked about everyday things like how he was adjusting to life in the city and how his exam preparation was going. But I noticed that every now and then he would glance at the curves in my top that didn't cover, and I kept wondering if I was attracting him in some way. That's when I purposefully dropped a spoon on the floor, pretending I had no idea what I was doing. I bent down slowly to pick it up. As I crouched, I felt Christian's piercing gaze on me. I didn't need to look at him to know he was flustered and staring at what I was showing. I stood up with the spoon in hand and continued washing the dishes as if nothing had happened, but I noticed that Christian was different. He was quieter, a bit more nervous. Perhaps he tried to hide it, but I could tell he was fidgeting with his hands, as if something was bothering him in his pocket. He looked at me a bit surprised by the question and quickly said, "Nothing, Auntie. I'm just thinking about the training." I smiled at him and said he didn't need to worry so much, that he was doing well and everything would work out fine. We finished washing the dishes in silence, and I noticed that the atmosphere between us had changed. Christian was clearly uncomfortable, and I knew that part of it was because of me, which was exactly what I wanted. That night, as I lay down to sleep, I thought about what had happened to it. It wasn't just a simple tease. It was a new feeling, maybe a little dangerous, but at the same time it made me curious to see what else might happen that night after a seemingly ordinary day. I felt a restlessness within me, The fire that had been building up over the past few days was becoming impossible to extinguish. After making sure everything was in order in the house, I decided to go to Christian's room to see if he needed anything. As I approached the door, I heard him. "It feels like she's testing me. I don't know how much longer I can hold out," he said in a tone of excitement and nervousness. My cheeks flushed as I heard that. I knew I was playing with fire, but what he said on the phone made me realize that Christian was no longer the boy I knew but a man struggling with his own desires. Something inside me ignited, and my curiosity became more intense, so I decided not to enter the room at the time, but what I heard kept replaying in my mind. It was obvious that he was attracted to me, and the thought of it excited me more than I should have returned to my room, but I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, imagining what it would be like if I decided to take things a little further. The next night, I passed by Christian's room again, and once again I heard his voice on the phone. "She won't stop, man. I don't know what to do. Just thinking about her drives me insane." This time, the desire in his voice was clear, and I knew I was about to cross a line. So I stayed there listening, and when he hung up the phone, I waited for a few minutes. Before leaving, I waited for a moment of silence before returning to my room. I didn't want to rush things, but I liked the idea that he was thinking of me that way. That night, I lay in bed with a smile on my face, knowing that the game was just getting started. It wasn't just about Christian. It was about the power I had over him, and how it made me feel alive again. It was time to see how far this game could take me. One day, I decided to take a long, relaxing bath. When I entered the bathroom, I realized I had left my towel in the bedroom. I smiled, knowing it was the perfect excuse, and called out to Christian in a sweet voice, asking him to bring me the towel which was on my bed. "Could you get it for me?" I asked, trying to sound casual. When he reached the bathroom door, I said, "You can come in, Christian. If I step out like this, I'll get the whole floor wet." In an innocent tone, he hesitated for a moment but then entered, extending the towel to me without looking directly at me. I noticed how nervous he was becoming, almost trembling, while at the same time trying to keep his composure. When I took the towel from his hands, our eyes finally met, and it felt like time had stopped. As he turned to leave, he muttered something about needing to leave, and I couldn't help but tease him a little more. "Thank you, dear. I hope I didn't bother you," I said softly. I leaned against the wall, watching my nephew's nervous expression and closing the door behind him as soon as he left. Feeling my heart race, I knew I was getting to him, but it was also affecting me as I tried to sleep. I imagined what was going through Christian's mind at that moment. Was he also struggling with his own desires just like I was? The thought that he might be thinking of me in that way made me smile. Perhaps it was time to take the next step, but carefully to avoid going too far. It was late, and after a rather quiet day, I decided it was time to see how far Christian was willing. "It's late, Christian, and you have the excuse of getting a glass of water. Don't you want to rest a little?" I asked in a low, soft voice. "Auntie, I'm not sleepy. I think I'll stay here a little longer," he said, trying to be calm, but I could tell he was nervous. "So I'm going to bed. If you need anything, I'll be in my room," I said. Leaving the question in the air, as I reached the door, I looked back one last time, catching Christian watching me closely. His eyes couldn't look away from me. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. What had happened during the day was still fresh in my mind. I got out of bed and walked silently down the hallway to my nephew's room. I stopped in front of the closed door, listening to the soft sound of his breathing. I knocked lightly, and he, with a somewhat sleepy voice, asked Christian's voice to betray the calm he was attempting to maintain. "Yes, Auntie, it's just that I don't know. Sometimes I feel a little lost. I want to go out to parties, but I need to focus on my studies." "I understand," I replied gently. When we're alone, I place my hand on his, and the feelings intensify. But don't worry. The touch of my hand seemed to calm him while also exciting my nephew. I could see in his eyes that he was fighting against that desire. "You're special to me, Christian, and all I want is you. To know that I'm sorry if I sometimes wear very sensual clothes. I feel more comfortable that way, and if it bothers you, I can dress appropriately. I know that men's minds think a lot of naughty things even about their aunt," I said, laughing nervously, and he looked at me with a mixture of relief and desire. I don't mind at all, Aunt Jennifer, but it's like you said. A man gets excited right away when he sees a woman like you, regardless of her being his aunt, and in that moment sleep well. Murmured before leaving the room. Carlos returned home for a few days, and with him, the sense of normalcy in our married life returned as it was before. But now there was something that only Christian and I shared. Our connection. He was looking at me with more desire, the little provocations, the glances full of double meanings. All of it seemed to be waiting for the right moment. It was late afternoon, and we decided to have a barbecue to enjoy family time. Behind me, I thought it was Carlos, but when I turned around, I saw it was Christian. He was very close, and I could feel every muscle of his against me. When he leaned forward a little more, my heart raced, and he whispered, "No, I'm fine. But what are you doing here? Your uncle will not be pleased to see you away from the grill." I responded, trying to remain calm, but my voice was a little shaky. Jean smiled, the smile I recognized. He was busy with the meat and responded in a low voice, almost a whisper, so he wouldn't notice if I helped a little. Around here, there was something in the way he said it that made my stomach turn with excitement and nervousness. He stayed close to me while I continued to cut the vegetables, trying to concentrate, but it was impossible to ignore his proximity and the warmth of his body so close to mine. "You're provoking me, aren't you? Just as I did with you," I asked, half joking, half nervous, but just a little, and he responded in a tone of voice that was both playful and serious before stepping away. Before the situation could get bolder, returning to the grill beside Carlos, who had no idea what was happening in the kitchen, I stayed there alone, trying to regain control of the situation and my own thoughts. Later, during dinner, the heated GLES between Christian and me continued. Carlos, for his part, noticed nothing, completely oblivious to what was happening between us. With Carlos away on another trip, the house became quiet again, leaving room for us and the provoca. I went into my room. I put on a silk nightgown, short and soft to the touch. I lay down on the bed but couldn't sleep. I knew Christian was in the next room, probably as restless as I was. The idea that he might be thinking about me just as I was thinking about him made me smile. I got up quietly and walked to the door of my room. I paused there for a moment but soon made up my mind. With light steps, I went to Christian's room and knocked softly on the door, a little surprised when I opened it. His gaze moved down my body as he assessed the situation before responding. I was also awake. I was enjoying the sight, and I could feel the heat growing between us. I approached slowly. "Can I sit beside the bed?" asked. Despite the fact that I already knew the answer, he simply nodded, making a yes gesture. When I sat down beside him, the proximity heightened my excitement, and I knew I was about to cross the line. "My dear, do you want to play with me today as a celebration of your theoretical test score?" I asked him, dying of excitement. He replied to me in a still, firm voice. "That is what I want most, Aunt Jennifer. You provoked me a lot. Don't be mean to me now. Instead, let me enjoy a little. Do not worry. You can enjoy it for the rest of the day, my dear. You leave and I will be your reward. Now you'll work hard to pass the physical test soon after we kissed for a long time." "I've never felt so relieved when we were done," Christian said. I responded, saying that Carlos didn't take advantage of those curves at all, and that I'd have to look for fun on the street. But with him at home, everything was perfect. For me, the days passed, and Carlos was still gone. The house, which used to feel like a safe haven, had become a playground where every word had a double meaning. When Carlos returned from his trip, missing the bar, he went running to have a few drinks while I was preparing his dinner, and Christian came from behind with that usual volume. "Calm down. Your uncle is here today. Leave the bedroom door open, and I'll be there at midnight. Okay?" he said, in a calm voice, giving 2 kisses on his face. "It's just that, Aunt Clara. Now that I've tasted it, I can't control the urge to have you drive me insane," my nephew replied, burning with heat, so he kissed me and went to the living room. Carlos returned home, and after everyone had dinner, it was time to sleep, so it was midnight, and Carlos had fallen. Asleep from drinking so much, I went to my nephew's room. He was already prepared and ready to receive me. As soon as I entered, I locked the door and started breaking the ice. Your body is so strong and hard, my love, and that piece of yours makes me shiver all over. Christian, struggling to hold back the urge to kiss me, asked, "Are you sure the cuckold is already asleep?" "Hun, I don't want him to interrupt our game." So I gave him 2 kisses and replied, "Don't worry, my love, I'm only yours." So we kissed and had intercourse for 2 hours. Then I decided to go back to bed so as not to worry my husband about anything. Christian kissed me and said, "Don't worry. He doesn't do what I do," Jennifer said with a loving look. "Your uncle is going to travel in the last week of the month, my dear, and this is your last week here. Let's make the most of it, Carlos." He left the next morning at dawn, said goodbye to me, and as soon as he started the truck, I went to open the door to go to Christian's when I heard knocks on the door. It was him. Asking to come in, I opened the door and he said, "Today I wanted to be. What are your thoughts on Aunt leaving my mark here in this room and on this bed?" I was only wearing a top when I replied, "Honey, this week I want you to leave your mark all over the house. I want you to leave every memory you can. Don't hold back." As soon as I finished saying that, he came towards me and started kissing me with all that youthful passion, whispering, "This is the best trip of my whole life. Thank you, Aunt Clara." We played around all night and slept right there. The next day, my nephew was out taking the final exam for the contest when I went. For every moment we spent together that month, I was surprised by you, Christian, and today you've officially become my favorite nephew, I said, laughing with double meaning, to which he responded, "Aunt Jennifer, I appreciate the time I spent here. It was a fantastic learning experience for me. And if everything works out, can I come back because